desert.
Night has fallen on the desert, and autumn is in our sights and range. Be glad about it. Overall, it's been a very mild summer for the Mojave. One of the TV news stations in Los Angeles even had to put out a story about how cool it has been on the West Coast. In Southern California, not a record breaker, as very early records from LA show some equally cool summers back in 1925 or so. But still, it has been all right, been bearable, sometimes even pleasant in the mornings. The nights have generally been fine all summer long. Got behind the wheel early in the morning last week, or whenever it was, and it was 60 degrees at 7 a.m. And 3 or 4 months ago, it was 30 degrees at 7 a.m., windshield all frosted over. Live in the mountains and you will get some seasonal weather, Mojave Desert or not. It's mostly dry this time of year, and the monsoon rains rarely make it this far west against the mountains where I've been in recent years. I watched a big thunderstorm build up over 29 Palms, and that monsoon moisture and heat got a cooking, and soon that whole side of the sky was a massive wall of blue, of gray, of sunlit white. The wind whipping around, and I thought maybe it'll make it over here. The weather alert went off on the phone, warning of dangerous thunderstorms, flooding, etc., but it never got here. I could have driven over, parked somewhere, walked around, and breathed up that creosote humidity that is the sweetest perfume I know. But I did not, because I could see it was already breaking up, and by the time I drove a half hour to 29, it would just be puddles and potholes. The highway lined with wrecked sedans.
Desert Oracle Radio.
It happened again this week. I looked at the radar loop on the National Weather Service website, and there was heavy downpour all around. The heaviest band seemingly right over the house, right on top of me. I went outside, smelled the rain in the distance, and not even a drop on the ground. Was hiking through a little canyon nearby, and I saw a rare sight for me, especially this time of year. A trio of black-tailed mule deer, including the smaller one, the youngling. There's not much to eat around here for the grazers like our western mule deer. Not much shade until you get up higher on the mountain either. So I was pleased to see them, and I greeted them with the appropriate psychic communication. They glanced back, and then took their time going over the ridge. My dog did not catch the scent until they were out of sight. He was trailing behind. Nicole over at Cactus Mart sees the mule deer all the time where she walks. There's water down there, along with green trees and shady paths. I could use a spring a little closer to home, or maybe a guzzler like the ones set up around Mojave National Preserve. All the critters on and around my property tend to enjoy a little water now and then when it's around. The cottontails and squirrels, the birds and the bees, and the damn ants. And the damn ants as well, the ones I find drowned by the dozens every time I fill up the patio water bowl. The doves, still cranking out chicks for another month or so, will come down from the nest box I made and just stand around the water. When I take out the bowl with the ice piled high on very hot days. And for an hour or three in the shade, that ice and the metal bowl makes for a nice outdoor evaporative cooler if you stand on it or next to it. The doves will take a drink or three, back off when the freeze brain hits, and then luxuriate in the cooler temperature there. But not the Roadrunner. The Roadrunner openly disdains that big bowl of cold, fresh, filtered water right out of the refrigerator. I'll see it out there in the 100-degree sun, eating whatever's crawling around out there, mostly ants and little lizards this time of year. And then it stands, maybe with half its tail in the halfway shade of a creosote, beak open in the heat. And then it moves very quickly across the shaded patio, glances over at the water, and flicks its tail in disgust, and off it goes. Old Man Roadrunner. The most raggedy-ass Roadrunner known to science. Absolute king of the realm. No clucks to give. On a soft monsoon evening, the sky streaked with golden bands, tropical clouds drawn up from the Sea of Cortez. Everything is vibrant, coated in delirious light. No sound but the crunch of boots and dog paws in the sandy wash lined with desert willow and Mormon tea before you climb up to the mesa and through a high desert forest of Joshua tree and juniper. The birds are elsewhere today, jackrabbit and coyote too. So we sit for a while at sunset, great Apollo blazing over western mountains. 3 slender cloud ships roll slow and graceful just above, while shafts of hurricanes stretch across higher altitudes. A slender crescent moon takes over for a brief dusky shift before following the sun over the horizon. A number of minor annoyances and maybe a crisis or two were heavy on my mind before this simple walk over landscape I know well. Nothing was resolved, nothing was delivered, other than an hour and a half of stirring VistaVision scenes of the sort that always cause the movie orchestra to build up, to swell up, and sweeping romantic music. By morning, solid hurricane cloud cover had settled over the Mojave. The kind of sky that makes me think of New Orleans or the West Midlands. By morning, it's humid and warm at dawn. No night cooling when the cloud layer is there. I've been reading an interesting volume of Plutarch's Moralia, or Moral Essays, which this Greek historian and teacher of philosophy wrote some 1925 years ago, roughly 100 AD. If you know Plutarch, you likely first learned of him through his often thrilling lives of famous historical figures. A Greek life paired with an appropriate Roman life, which is why the English translation is generally titled Parallel Lives. Plutarch's brief biographies of Alexander the Great and the outrageous Alcibiades are some of the best known, as is his famous life of Julius Caesar, the primary source for so many later writers, especially William Shakespeare, who recycled many fine lines from the English translation of Plutarch's Life of Caesar. That golden ring in Shakespeare's left earlobe was the fashion of piracy, The privateers who prowled the ocean seeking treasure, mostly aboard the big Spanish galleons. And some of those English pirates were under the command of Queen Bess herself, which especially vexed Spain's King Philip II, who longed to marry and or kill Elizabeth, having already married Elizabeth's half-sister Mary, Bloody Mary, who died age 42 without leaving an heir. That golden earring Shakespeare wore was a mark of his career, his life, and the generally disreputable profession of acting or theater. The fashion had spread from pirates to playwrights, and the idea was that when you died, whether of plague or scurvy or drowning or the sword, the wealth hanging off your earlobe was enough for a proper burial, maybe even enough to send your bones home to Dover or Bristol or your little hometown along the Avon. Avon comes from the old Brittonic word for river, which is still the word for river in Welsh, Avon. So the name River Avon means river. So Plutarch's Moralia, Volume 5, in the Loeb Classical Library contains his works on religious ceremony and temples, starting with a beautiful description of Egypt's ancient practices, many still in use during his time, although the native Egyptian dynasty had fallen first to Alexander and the Ptolemies, and then to Rome after Cleopatra's suicide or regicide in the year 30 BC. Shakespeare has a good play about that, too. It's kind of interesting that Antony and Cleopatra had conspired to give their 3 children rule of the Roman provinces of Judea and Tarsus, along with Crete, Cyprus, and Cyrene. Remember that Jesus from the Greek Gospels was born in Judea, while the primary inventor of the Christian religion, Paul, was a Roman citizen from Tarsus. According to the Gospel of Matthew, the only gospel that contains this story, Jesus spent his childhood in Egypt. Scholars say likely in the Jewish quarter of Alexandria, where so many scholars and historians of the ancient world labored at their works within the great library dedicated to the great Alexander. So when Plutarch was in Egypt, he was visiting as a dignitary and historian. Like Herodotus before him, Plutarch gained much knowledge of the rituals, rites, and divine genealogies of Egypt from the high priests themselves. and he was especially keen to share these findings with his dear friend and colleague, the Pythia of Delphi, the high priestess Clea, to whom he addresses the epistolary account titled On the Worship of Isis and Osiris. All good things, my dear Clea. Sensible men must ask from the gods. And especially do we pray that from those mighty gods we may, in our quest, gain a knowledge of themselves, so far as such a thing is attainable by men. For we believe that there's nothing more important for man to receive or more ennobling for God of His grace to grant than the truth. God gives to men the other things for which they express a desire, but of sense and intelligence He grants them only a share, insomuch as these are His especial possessions and His sphere of activity. For the deity is not blessed by reason of his possession of gold and silver, nor strong because of thunder and lightning, but through knowledge and intelligence. Of all the things that Homer said about the gods, he has expressed most beautifully this thought. Both, indeed, were in lineage one and of the same country. Yet was Zeus the earlier born, and his knowledge was greater. Thereby the poet plainly declares that the primacy of Zeus is nobler, since it is elder in knowledge and in wisdom. I think also that a source of happiness and the eternal life, which is the lot of God, is that events which come to pass do not escape his prescience. But if his knowledge and meditation on the nature of existence should be taken away, then, to my mind, his immortality is not living, but a mere lapse of time. Therefore, the effort to arrive at the truth, and especially the truth about the gods, is a longing for the divine. For the search for truth requires for its study and investigation the consideration of sacred subjects. And it is a work more hallowed than any form of holy living or temple service. And not least of all, it is well pleasing to that goddess whom you worship, a goddess exceptionally wise and a lover of wisdom, to whom, as her name at least seems to indicate, knowledge and understanding are in the highest degree appropriate. For Isis is a Greek word, and so also is Typhon, her enemy, who is conceited, as the name implies, because of his ignorance and self-deception. He tears to pieces and scatters to the winds the sacred writings which the goddess collects and puts together and gives into the keeping of those that are initiated into the holy rites. Since this consecration by a strict regimen, and by abstinence from many kinds of food and from the lust of the flesh, curtails licentiousness and the love of pleasure, and induces a habit of patient submission to the stern and rigorous services in shrines, the end and aim of which is the knowledge of Him who is the first, the Lord of all, the ideal one. Him does the goddess urge us to seek, since He is near her and with her and in close communion. The name of her shrine also clearly promises knowledge and comprehension of reality, for it is named Isean, the Temple of Isis, to indicate that we shall comprehend reality if in a reasonable and devout frame of mind we pass within the portals of her shrines. Moreover, many writers have held her to be the daughter of Hermes, and many others the daughter of Prometheus, because of the belief that Prometheus is the discoverer of wisdom and forethought, and Hermes the inventor of grammar and music. For this reason, they call the first of the muses at Hermopolis Isis as well as Justice. For she is wise, as I have said, and discloses the divine mysteries to those who truly and justly have the name of bearers of the sacred vessels and wearers of the sacred robes. These are they who within their own soul, as though within a casket, bear the sacred writings about the gods, clear of all superstition and pedantry. And they cloak them with secrecy, thus giving intimation, some dark and shadowy, some clear and bright, of their concepts about the gods, intimations of the same sort as are clearly evidenced in the wearing of the sacred garb. For this reason, too, the fact that the deceased votaries of Isis are decked with these garments is a sign that these sacred writings accompany them, and that they pass to the other world, possessed of these and of naught else. It is a fact, Clea, that having a beard and wearing a coarse cloak does not make philosophers, nor does dressing in linen and shaving the hair make votaries of Isis. But the true votary of Isis is he who, when he has legitimately received what is set forth in the ceremonies connected with these gods, uses reason in investigating and in studying the truth contained therein. But now let us take up again the proper subject of our discussion. Isis is, in fact, the female principle of nature, and is receptive of every form of generation in accord with which she is called by Plato, the gentle nurse and the all-receptive, and by most people has been called by countless names, since, because of the force of reason, she turns herself to this thing or that, and is receptive of all manner of shapes and forms. She has an innate love for the first and most dominant of all things, which is identical with the good. And this she yearns for and pursues. But the portion which comes from evil she tries to avoid and to reject. For she serves them both as a place and means of growth, but inclines always towards the better, and offers it opportunity to create from her and to impregnate her with likenesses in which she rejoices and is glad that she is made pregnant and teeming with these creations. For creation is the image of being in matter, and the thing created is a picture of reality. It is impossible to conceive of earthly things as being gods in themselves, for God is not senseless nor inanimate nor subject to human control. As a result of this, we have come to regard as gods those who make use of these things and present them to us and provide us with things everlasting and constant. Nor do we think of the gods as different gods among different peoples, nor as barbarian gods and Greek gods, nor as southern and northern gods. But just as the sun and the moon and the heavens and the earth and the sea are common to all, but are called by different names by different peoples, So for that one rationality which keeps all these things in order, and the one providence which watches over them, and the ancillary powers that are set over all, there have arisen among different peoples, in accordance with their customs, different honors and appellations. Thus men make use of consecrated symbols, some employing symbols that are obscure, but others those that are clearer, in guiding the intelligence toward things divine, though not without a certain hazard. For some go completely astray and become engulfed in superstition, and others, while they fly from superstition as from a quagmire, on the other hand, unwittingly fall, as it were, over a precipice into atheism. From Amboy to Zzyzx and across the Great Mojave Wilderness, this is Desert Oracle Radio, episode 250, with Soundscapes by Red, Blue, Black, Silver. Desert Oracle is supported by our listeners. Many thanks to those of you who keep us on the air. Go to desertoracle.com and become a patron. And tell your friends about the show if you think they're up for the journey. Much cooler weather on the way around our desert lands. Get out there and appreciate it. Let them make you whole again. Repeat daily if you can, before daytime September brings back the heat for a little bit longer. Good night from the voice of the desert.